welcome. We are here with DBN's The Diplomats, covering the interview portion, the series of grievances and recriminations that happens after every top board game. It's our second interview. Some people know him as Phillip. I happen to think he's the Charlie Brown of top board play. He got tricked by Riaz in his first game. This time he was Charlie Brown to Tim's Lucy, constantly trying to work with Tim and constantly getting the football taken from him before he got the kickoff. Welcome, Phillip Bass.
Honored to be here. You would love to hear I was Charlie Brown in a High School Musical, so it's consistent.
Good
Good grief often runs through my mind.
First of all, Phillip, what brought you back? I actually thought after the first game where you had tremendous success, you kind of played a little bit more. You dropped off the face of the earth. I thought another diplomacy casualty. We were never going to hear from Phillip again. Cedric called you the used car salesman in our first coverage of you. Like, what happened and why are you back? Thank God.
The plague ended, so I found myself with considerably more free time. What ended up bringing back the itch was that during my first rodeo, I stumbled into owning the diplomacy chapter in DC, and I tried launching it then. It didn't quite work out. The pandemic was still strong. And then I'd say in December, like, people started being like, when are we doing this? What are we doing? Like, of 2024. And so I was like, all right, fine, screw it. And so I thought it'd be good for the brand to remind people that there is a community in DC that's enthusiastic about playing. And so I was looking forward to the opportunity to try to put the area back on the map.
Are you going to go to BlazeCon in January?
I'd love to. I know that I need to buy a ticket. I know I need to do all those logistics, but I have not asked my significant other if it makes sense. Because what I will do is bully everybody I know into going. Like, I may, because I mean, the local chapter here, it's like there's like 4 people who'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll go, and I flood it with 3 of my friends and say, guys, we're just going to go and we're going to have fun. Don't worry about the game. Just go to Venice and you should be fine. So I think that it's a good time. And so I would look forward to doing that as well, and to encourage the community to get involved with that too.
Well, both Keith and I are going. It's in the DC area, and I hope to see you there so you can watch me beat Keith again on a board. That'd be fun. All right. It's fine. All right.
I'm due.
All right. So you had a great semis, and you were the 3rd seed, and you got to pick 2nd. France goes 1st, but you get to really pick, and you pick Italy, which, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Italy was the only country never to win a top board format on extended or press tournaments for the first 8 seasons of Nexus and the 3 Olympus finals.
Correct. Yeah, Italy is the only non-winner.
So it's dangerous.
Well, had I known that statistic, maybe I wouldn't have done it. The reality is that right around the start of the finals, my company was going to be going through massive layoffs. We didn't know when it was happening. We just knew it was happening. And so personally, I view in diplomacy that my strong suit is my press, my weak suit is my tactics. And so Italy has quite vanilla tactics, depending on how you choose to play it for the first 2 years of gameplay. So I thought Italy was a safe place for me to be able to still stay engaged with the game while also keeping in mind real life priorities. And so I went with Italy.
Okay. As it shook out, yeah.
I will say I did want, my friends bullied me, but I wanted to actually drop to 7th and be Turkey. And because I thought that would be fun, and I can't remember the last time I played Turkey, but it doesn't matter. That's just my own little, I told a couple of them, I was like, I don't know, maybe I want to be Turkey. How bad could it be?
Well, the last guy who did that was like a few years ago. Keith, I can't even remember his name. No. He got smashed.
He was top seed, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know if he soloed or as I did well. He's green though. He had no idea what a top board was like. Yeah, he died quickly.
Well, look, you were at least by us an experienced hand, and one of these having gone through one of the most memorable games ever. People still talk about Riaz's inability to press the stab against you after he waived the build. I mean, it's a legendary game, and so we labeled you a favorite going in here. And then I guess that was further verified by the fact that Richard and you had a preliminary round where you had worked really well together.
Yes, we did. Yeah. So but I also, I think I hinted at this in my interview. I wasn't really interested in doing an AI. Like, I was willing to entertain it. I think you should walk into every game with every option, but I never would have considered myself a tempo player. But you kind of like pegged me in like the first couple of commentaries, being like, no, he's just going to go try to eat that Austria position and see what happens. And so that was ultimately where I ended up falling into that. So
it was a doomed, self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. So look, what was the strategy? Talk to us. I always want to say this. Talk to us about your impressions of the other players from the press, from your perspective, not from a diplomatic perspective, but like you, Phillip, had to deal with these people. And what strategies did you want to employ in the early game?
Yeah.
Apart from just making it easy.
No, it's a good question because, like I said, I walk into every game forgetting the last because I think that matters. When it comes to the press of the game, I was disappointed for the first year-ish by the lack of press from Turkey, France, and Germany. I thought Austria's was solid, but I was overwhelmed, perhaps enjoyed England and Russia's.
Yeah, I actually heard that. I'm very surprised that Darcy didn't have a lot of press because he seems such a personable guy. I wouldn't be shocked to hear that from Turkey just because I've heard his English is amazing but just Europeans in general, in my mind, tend to have lower press tolerance for what you do or Jordan does. A little surprised to hear that about Rob in France.
Yeah, I think not to foreshadow or get ahead of myself too much, but I think that after 01, he really picked it up. But most of the press with him was us agreeing that we shouldn't go after each other and hearing that he and Germany were not getting along.
Yeah. And so Tim seemed to. Did you listen to Tim's interview? If you didn't, that's fine. But I'm wondering if you did.
I did.
Tim obviously, I think, was pretty honest in the beginning stages, talking about how he let this wintergreen open. Is that what you wanted early on, or is that something that developed as the game went on?
No, I wanted it pretty early. I think looking back on his interview, I would argue that he undersold our dynamic for the first few years. I was really excited about that dynamic. He had come to me early on, noting that there was this rumor of an AI, which I'm happy to get into and I have thoughts about, but it was incredibly heavy press. He commented that he's gone back and looked at my interview from 4 years ago, which I thought was kind of crazy because I forgot about it. I didn't actually, but you know what I mean? I was worried about this projection of an AI versus RT, and that was just going to stall out the East and give the West all the time that they needed. Because I had played a preliminary game with Cedric, and I was terrified of him. Because by the time I had realized how terrifying he was, nobody else wanted to go against him. And so I was really quick and he's going to be heartbroken to hear this. From early in the game, I was really quick to be like, we got to figure out what to do about this guy. This is going to be a problem. I'm a little worried, and just constantly thinking about how to make sure that the West can stay a mess and the East can resolve as fast as possible. And so
I think that's an admirable goal.
Yeah. So and this is, I think, where I am better in diplomacy is I think in those kinds of ways. Where I've already started thinking about how does the end game need to kind of look, and I don't necessarily put restrictions on it. I just want to make it work. So example being wanting the West to be chaotic or at least have some sort of hand in it, with Darcy not being super active on press and having a decent relationship with Austria, but not extraordinary like I was having with Russia. I felt like that a Central Powers alliance was going to work. But the dynamic with Russia was so compelling. I thought this is great. If he can get them on, if he can be engaged on this issue, then maybe there's an option for us to clean up the East and cause shenanigans in the West, whether Cedric picked France or Germany.
Okay. I want you to talk about a few things, but I'm thinking my theme here is, okay, you want quick resolution of the East, but there's several things that sort of crept in before we get into the orders that made it seems like it's problematic. One is you weren't that interested in AI. Two, as Tim said in his interview, he was definitely not interested in an AIR, that he never wanted to do that because he saw in a prior game that you and AI worked together, and maybe he didn't believe you on that point. And third, I'd like you to address your relationship with Turkey here, because you said he's not talking to you a lot in press, but the relationship's important. So what did you develop with him, if anything, in the early stages?
Yeah, on resolving the East, we can get into this as you'll see this start to unfold as the tactics were going on. But the way that Tim and I kind of decided the game to go early on was that I would project an AI, he would project an RT, giving the West some semblance of time to figure themselves out. And then the idea would be that we jump on Austria, then he jumps on Turkey, and then we just tag team it. And then with the dynamic with Turkey, I didn't hear much about him until I was from him until I was in the Aegean. And then from there forward, he lied to me for the rest of the game. And I totally bought the pity party. And I was, in retrospect, I don't know if I ever could have imagined just how much somebody was doing that. So it was constantly hard for me to believe, with the amount of press that he was committing to it, that he was ever lying. And in each instance, it was slightly better. The deviousness was impeccable. But albeit, like, I don't know, I have a lot of thoughts, but I digress.
Keith, let's pull up the map.
All right. Oh, I went all the way back again. I had this pre-set up.
Embarrassing.
It happens.
All right. Well, the move to Tyrolia is interesting. Let's talk about that.
It actually is as bland as you could imagine, despite it. No one ever asked me to DMZ it. Tim asked me to go, and I forgot that Austria was in the UK, so I sent him a message pretty close to the deadline that I was going to go to Tyrolia instead. Tim did say that he was
instead of what, Trieste?
Instead of holding.
Ah, okay.
Like,
did you talk about the Trieste move in the spring?
I don't think so. It really picked up here because this is when Darcy woke up and was really stressed about Munich. But we can honestly, moves wise, 01 is, or like spring 01 is pretty vanilla for me. If you guys want to jump to the next.
Yeah, we'll hit it, Keith, in the fall when you go into Trieste and the Aegean. I mean, it looks like a really strong AI. I think we both love the moves.
Yeah, I mean, I did too. So you can, in the perspective of a wintergreen, it was even better because we had all the forward position that we needed. And then I was, for Fall 01, I think in Rob's interview, he mischaracterized the dynamic about Tyrolia and Burgundy. I knew he was going to Burgundy, but I wanted to have a conversation about Munich. And as far as I can recall, for about 75% of the time leading up to the orders, I didn't hear from him at all. So I didn't want to have to, I felt like that was not really going to be an option. So as Darcy was constantly pounding me on it, I was really I wasn't comfortable committing that I wasn't going to Munich in case I did have the option. So it was hesitant. And then ultimately Darcy was pushing with Austria, and we decided that I will go to Trieste and we'll do the Trieste loan. And
I'm totally surprised. Having heard all this and now having it laid out, because the way Rob put it, if I remember correctly, is like, well, we had a brief conversation and he wasn't going to support me in the Munich and I wasn't going to support him in the Munich. But Keith, what do you think? Like, what France's game has totally changed?
Every time.
France should put you into Munich. And if he's really that worried about Germany, it almost forces England in an awkward EG or, oh, well, I guess I'll press on Germany now situation. I'm surprised he didn't try and sell that. I should have pushed him on that. Maybe you would have gone to Munich, huh?
I would have, 100%. Like, if I had been given the offer to go to Munich, I would have done it. But he was not going to let me into Munich, and nor was I going to let him into Munich, because I was more interested in momentum, not screwing Germany.
Yeah, France has no rapport with Germany, and once in EF, I'm like, throw Italy in there. It's just a loan anyways for the most part.
Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Yeah, that was the plan there. And then I don't think there was really anything else that happened for me in Follow 1 tactics-wise. Again, AI still chummy. Russia and I really chatty. I also should stress that I was so sold on this Russia relationship that I was sending him evening notes. So like at like 5 p.m. my time was about 9 a.m. his time, or whenever he was getting up. And so I would be like, good morning. I hope you slept well. Like, here's what's been going on around the board. What are your thoughts? I'm really curious about your engaging on this, so that we could really commit to, like, if we do this right, we can manipulate every side of the board. And I was so disappointed. Like, I'm building up a lot to the 0-3 stab, because for me, that was more devastating than 0-5, because that was like, I was so sold on this. I thought that we had a really game-winning strategy here, where at least one of us could top this board.
Okay. And meanwhile, not only that, but you probably are in Austria's good graces too. Even, I mean, he's lending you Trieste. Clearly, he knows it's happening, and you've got two solid relationships. And yeah, I hear you that Russia's your true love, but it's okay. So you build Fleet Naples in winter, and then talk about going to Serbia.
I liked the idea of getting there, and so Austria was open to it. Russia and I had discussed it, and that's how we made sure that that would work, because Turkey needed him in order to guarantee it. Right about here, though, when I got to Aegean is also when Turkey laid out this sob story for me about how Russia had been kind of bullying him, and that it had been a really one-sided relationship, and he wasn't comfortable, and he'd like to find something else. And God, that ate me up. And so I asked him to dislodge me from Aegean here, because Turkey was, or I knew that we were going to get Austria's Serbia army into Bulgaria, and that was the goal. Tim was going to enable this to happen. And so if I wanted to start trying to cozy up to Turkey, then this was another place to start laying the groundwork for that move.
And maybe you'll get a convoy out of it if he thinks you're on board. At the time, though, did you know that this move to black was apparently invited? I was beyond shocked to hear that from Tim.
No, and again, Turkey told me that Russia said, I'm going to Black Sea and you're going to get over it. And that was the tone of to me, that was their dynamic, is that Tim started to come off as this bully that was like taking advantage of a new player. And that that broke my heart. And so I was such easy soul for me. I was like, okay, maybe Russia's not as perfect as I'd like him to be. I should look into this and try to figure out what to do.
So the idea of him going to Aegean was so Bulgaria wouldn't get piffed and it would have a place to retreat.
Say that again.
Sorry. Sure. The idea of him taking Aegean was so Bulgaria would have a place to retreat and not get piffed. Was that the pitch?
And then I could get out of Aegean and go, because he was saying Aegean is a deal breaker. I can't work with you if you're in Aegean. I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to Tyrrhenian Sea, so let's put me in Eastern Mediterranean. He was open to that idea. So in fall, you're going to see that we also bounce in Syria. We had also arranged to do that as well.
Okay, go ahead to the fall. So the idea of this arrangement is really, it's a wintergreen. It's just, and you can see here, you're doing that because you're stabbing for Greece. You're in Serbia. But your plot was foiled a little bit, at least according to Richard. I'll let you respond that he did not know. He didn't know what was happening, but he suspected something right, and he just went to Trieste.
Yeah, he in the commentary when you said that I was a tempo. We talked about this after, obviously, because if I stab somebody, I feel terrible, and I want to talk about it and explain what went on and make sure that I dedicated a considerable amount of time to you. And so we ended up talking about it later, and he had said that whenever you called me a tempo player and that Austria bit, that made him incredibly anxious. And so here with the Trieste bit, he had actually told me that he wasn't going to Trieste and that he was going to bounce in Galicia. So I was like, all right, I don't know what to do with Serbia, but walking out of Serbia while also stabbing would be bad. So I'd rather be here and kick him out of Trieste next year. So
you knew it was a potential issue.
Yeah, but like, I mean, theoretically, if you spend enough time in a sandbox, like anything could be a potential issue.
Do you not see yourself as a tempo player?
No, I see myself as a good vibes player. That's a stupid thing to say, but it's like if I think that I'm going to have fun with you on this board, I'm more likely to work with you, even if it's not for my strategic advantage.
Well, in my defense, every time I look at your games, you're like 11, 12 centers.
Yeah,
I remember that game with Riaz where I think there was a Lady Razor cartoon. It was like Go Go Gas or something. It's talking about how fast you and Riaz had gotten off, particularly you. So that's why I probably always said it.
But that's the vibes. Is that for me? It's like, again, I got along with Riaz, and I enjoy forward progress. So in that way, I would be tempo. But for me personally, I crave optimization. So it's like, to me, I would get more bothered about a bad stab than about an unreasonable stab. So like for me, it's like, because it's a game. Like you're supposed to have fun with it, and you're supposed to just be people and enjoy yourself. And so in this instance, it was it's the same way, if that makes sense. I don't know if that is helpful.
Yeah. And did you know that Tim would be supporting Turkey back into Bulgaria? I mean, it's an odd winter green. I know you're getting rid of an Austrian unit there, so I assume you're okay with it.
I think so. I don't remember. I think so, because we were excited, because the goal was going to be that he was going down too. He was in Vienna and Budapest, so we weren't all too bothered. Like, we felt like that there was opportunity here, and so we were just going with it.
It's really both sides-ism, though, right? Because he could have supported himself down from Romania, if he wanted to. Clearly, he wanted Galicia at the time, and I think that Tim was being honest when he said this was his attempt to be in a wintergreen and an RT at the same time.
I believe it. It worked. You'll see it. So, I mean, I think that it's easy in retrospect to say that, oh, he could have had Romania go to Bulgaria, but had Bulgaria gone up supported by Budapest, then maybe it wouldn't have been as optimal. So, I don't know. Like,
it's a fair point.
I think that whenever you're in sandbox world, it's like if you realize a vulnerability and you start to focus on it, I empathize with anybody. So I think hindsight's always 20/20 in commentaries.
All right, I like the way you think. That's why sandbox is so frustrating for me, because it still all comes down to relationships, no matter what you work out in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So from here, did you give Richard the reach around here that you're talking about? I'm sorry. Let me tell you why I did all this.
Yeah,
I did. Probably spent all this time with Richard, only for you to get totally screwed over in the spring move.
Yeah, and I feel bad. I felt bad, obviously, but this comes in later in the game. You'll see it too, where I felt terrible. I felt like I had good position. I explained the situation. I made it clear why this was a good argument for me. And I think that ultimately, while we didn't love it, we just kind of kept going with it. But I was very upfront from here forward, or like even here, to his credit, he was trying to work it back to be like, what can we do? How can we make this work? And I was like, I don't know. I kind of want to end this year with Trieste. Like maybe and so for me, it was like, I'm not sure what to do in this situation, because I wasn't in the mood to stab Russia. And I wanted to guarantee that Turkey wasn't about to move against me. So I was being chummy with him. And I didn't want to contradict myself in my conversations, because I cannot handle the constant lying that it takes in press games where it's like 2-year turn, or like feels like 2-year turns, where it's like there's a lot to go on. And so I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, this is really the spring 1903 turn is the turn that I think things could have changed. This devastated your game, and also helped Cedric immensely, because he doesn't get stabbed, and you do, losing Serbia and Greece. So this was not a good day at the office.
No, seldom is there, but yeah, it happened. It sucks. The compounding issues here is that for my moves, I thought I was getting to work with Turkey and telling him to turn around, while also Russia was moving against Turkey. So my hope was that both of them were going to start fighting each other while I could go focus on Austria. So I wasn't really, honestly, the idea of a stab didn't even come to mind. Like, I was so committed to what we were doing and how we were building this out. I felt like I still think that even in like Fall 05, I could have made a comeback, but here I was pretty crushed. And Cedric, to his credit, was like my emotional support here. Without him, I probably would have just lost my mind because I mean, when you think that you understand the game and you realize you've had no idea what's going on the whole time and you're just screwed, like it was a good wake up call, but I still didn't hate what was happening. Ultimately, I could pull back. I still had Tunis in pocket. It's not ideal, but I had room to recover. And if I could slow down, have the RT fall apart, then there was space for me to grow in one of those directions. So that's kind of where my head went here after the initial. Like, I'm pretty sure I told Tim that I regret ever trusting him. And so it was not ideal. I wasn't in a good place.
I tried to put myself in your shoes and how you felt the entire game.
I'm sorry.
So I tried to put myself in your shoes.
Well, I didn't because I'm not a masochist, but talking about continuing the pain, now we see Darcy and Tyrolia, which, go back.
I'm impressed that he didn't do anything to me here. I think I might have just said, would you please not screw me here? And he went, sure. And like from there, I had this like incredibly beautiful relationship with Darcy from where I could say one thing to him and he'd go, yes, or he'd go, no, or I'm thinking about it. And like,
and you believed him.
Yeah, I had all the information I needed. After Tyrolia, I was like, whatever you want, guy. Like, I'll support you. So I really got a chance to enjoy him here. And it meant a lot. I also, unfortunately, had like this is just like, I don't know. Anyway, keep going.
Well, no, I mean, but let me give the meta point because we talked about this on the show. I think Keith and I both predicted this army would go to Piedmont, which it does. You can go to the fall moves, Keith. But I think the issue is at this point, it's an EGR. Like, and, Germany's supposed to be working with Russia. And now he's down in Piedmont. He's in Tyrolia. You are fighting Russia. And you may have trusted Darcy, but it's hard to trust the alliance structure.
I don't know what you mean necessarily by that, but honestly, I didn't because I feel like every player plays in their own self-interest and that's the default. And what the goal of diplomacy is to align your self-interest with one another as much as possible. And so it wasn't in Darcy's interest, I think, to go after Vienna because he wasn't going to get it. And it was too hard to hold anyway. He was always holding it for someone else, but taking out France was more likely to succeed. And also Cedric was probably asking him to do so. I do actually have some spicy tea here for Fall 03. I remember that there were a couple of conversations about Darcy stabbing Rob here and whether or not he would or won't. I don't know if it's why, and I'm sorry to say this, Rob, but I was the one who told him to not stab Cedric here. Because at this point, after the stab that happened to me in spring 03, I knew that if France collapses, and I'm so sorry, Rob, because he and I had our pity corner over there so long in the game. From here forward, I started playing, I called it the role of marriage counselor for Darcy and Cedric. Both of them would come to me to stab the other, and both times I encouraged them not to do it. So this is when Darcy comes to me asking if he should stab. And I had a whole conversation with him that I was like, no, you shouldn't, because the EG is the thing on the board that everyone has to worry about. If you stab him, he's just going to be able to try to turn this around with France, and then you're screwed. Like, you still have Russia on the other side, and they're clearly chummy. You've got problems, but the EG is the play, and you have room to grow. And as long as the AI can try to reconcile here, you're not going to get, you shouldn't have to worry about it. But on my side of the board, I told everyone I was going to convoy out of Albania and go to Tunis and try to make something work. With Austria, we had really talked a lot here and had a chance to catch up and talk about our differences and how embarrassed I was about still wanting Trieste. And then we also spent a lot of, which also I think explains a little bit of their holds, is that they were worried that I was still going to go after Trieste. So
yeah, he said that.
Yeah, so I made it clear that it's because for me, I think that you always need a friend on the board, and ultimately the reality is I didn't have one. And so I went to Tunis. I had obviously here asked Turkey to not stay in Greece and to go anywhere else against Tim, because at this point the EGR is so apparent, it's terrifying. And he wasn't interested in dealing with it. And so like it literally, I cannot stress enough that more often than not, all of my fleets in the Ionian are saying like, well, I don't really trust Turkey here. And it turns out I was right not to.
Yeah. Although you get lucky in the winter.
That was insane. Austria and I spent so much time essentially yelling at Turkey, being like, for the love of God, build a fleet in Ankara or Russia might win. You've got to do something because no one can stop him but you. And so,
well, thank God it was you in Austria who said that, because Tim blamed me.
He did.
Like, so literally, it was so much effort. Like literally, I think Austria at some point I told Austria, I was like, just promise him anything that isn't like your game. Like just do anything, because I felt, and I thought this was the right call, is that if with the fleet in Ankara, it is going to take him so long to do anything to me, like easily like a full year to turn around and to try to figure it out, that it is easier for him to turn around and hit Russia, grab Serbia, grab Romania, give me time to reconcentrate a position, and then move forward. So that
I like how all your advice is self-serving. Like the EG is clearly good because it keeps France and Russia more in check. That bill for Turkey protects Turkey,
but he's objectively correct from his perspective, Keith.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because like for Turkey, obviously the game works out for him. He survives with more centers than me. But I think that I am like, it is true that like for me, I knew that if France collapses, the only person who can stop England well with fleets is me, because Turkey just can't get there, and he's not going to try to go there. And so this was also a message I kept constantly talking to Tim about, is like, hey, if you want to deal with England down the road, I am your only candidate now, because if France collapses, then I am the only one. I'm the only option left. And so that really played into, I think that played into into 05, I would say. I don't know if
I maintain that it's a very difficult decision for Turkey. If Turkey doesn't build a fleet from, I believe, right, like Tim is right. Ionian breaks, Italy collapses, Russia down. But then Tim admitted it, that he was going to then stab Turkey. Like the position is horrible for him either way, no matter what he does.
Yeah, I think though that what Turkey does, it's so interesting. And once you kind of crack the code, it was incredibly fascinating to watch, is that every time his moves were guaranteed to be what helps me stay alive. And so while yes, Smyrna works, it puts him comically out of position and vulnerable to Russia. So if he builds an Ankara, but keeps momentum pushed against me, then that checks Russia somewhat. So once you kind of like realize that was where a lot of his brain goes with this, I feel like it makes sense. And I was fascinated by it because it's a very different play style for me. I definitely play with all cards on the table. Let's see how it goes. But his is very reserved, very slow, very methodical, which is ideal for what you want to be with Turkey. As you saw, he got second for it. So what can you do?
All right, let's go to 04 here, Keith. Here you're back in Albania, which I thought was good, and you go to Tyrolia. We debated whether you would just attack Austria from this position, and ultimately you do. So talk to us about what happened here and what the plans are.
Yeah, it wasn't the plan. The Austria was still a little uncomfortable with everything, all things considered. And I was really pushing for him and Turkey to come to some sort of reconciliation. And he agreed that he would, but asked me to not, he was like, I just don't want to share the moves. Like, it's still a little uneasy. I hope you don't mind. And I'm like, I don't. Like, I stabbed you. You should absolutely be uncomfortable with me. So I said, I'm going to Albania. And I told them both that. Like, I'm like, all the things that matter for you is I'm going to Albania. And I told Austria that Venice was his to command. Like, what do you need it to do? And so you can see how that played out, where I did get to Albania. Turkey tried to stop me, but Russia decided not to not accept the support, which plays into us trying to make it up later. and I go to Tyrolia to help protect Vienna in case Galicia goes to Bohemia. So
but then things change in the fall. So what happens?
I think that for me, the core thing was that I still needed an out, and that helping an AT work together is not going to help me get bigger. So Russia and I come to a reconciliation here where we're looking for an option to work together. And we realized that if we knock, we made the pitch, we're like, hey, I think actually here too, a big thing that happened is that he told me that Darcy was playing for third. And I think that really what it was is that once he realized that he lost the charm race to get Darcy and that Darcy was going to work with Cedric against him, I don't want to use the phrase panics, but he tried to realign his priorities. And so I think from here that we agreed to eliminate Austria. We agreed that we would eliminate Turkey, and I would get West to prop up France as fast as possible.
You said as part of that deal, you were supposed to get Trieste and Serbia.
Yes. So, and then that's what leads to this build being a lot of pressure, because he thought that me just getting any build was supposed to mean me getting a fleet, but I actually really want to build an army Naples to shore up Albania. But that's a conversation. So essentially,
let's go to it right now, Keith. Let's show the build.
Yeah, I do want to say though, I feel terrible with Austria. I felt bad about doing that. I think based on our press, he kind of knew the writing was on the wall. I didn't say it because I didn't want it to fall in a different direction, but I think that it was ultimately the right call. It gave me the space needed and the fleets needed to hold out for as long as I did.
He knew it was coming. He was mentally out of it at that point. He admitted it, and I think it's true.
Yeah, I'm glad though that he was able to leave before the break, because the break kind of broke me a little bit, because I realized how much more fun I was having outside of the game. And so having that realization made it really hard to be pulled back in. But there was a lot of pressure back and forth, because at the end of the day, I liked the idea of working with Russia, but he still, from my perspective, he still ultimately was the one who had been bullying Turkey and was the one who orchestrated a stab against me. So I wasn't enthusiastic about working with him. And so the idea of trying to come to some sort of arrangement with Turkey here was that we could both just partition the Balkans and move. It's not ideal, but if either of us are interested in winning the game, I need to be able to have the space to move fleets westward. And if I don't have that space, there is no unit that's going to stop Cedric or prop up France however much as possible.
But if you build an army, it is, I mean, I think it is right that it is inherently anti-Russian for all the reasons that you're saying. It is really it is real. So I can see why Russia's putting a lot of pressure on you, but he can't interpret it any other way. But on the other hand, it really helps Russia for you to build a fleet. I probably build a fleet here, but I think it's a hard call. Keith, what do you think?
I think you could build an army Rome and say, I want to get Germany out and just shuffle things to Albania anyways. But I think Russia's the biggest target here. And
say it again, sorry.
I just think Russia's the biggest target, and it makes sense for you to get one more dot before you actually have to build a fleet. And the building the fleet kind of locks you against Turkey for the most part.
That's how I felt too. If I could get Russia to welcome an army, that would give me more time to sort it out and also shore up a position in the Balkans to play Kingmaker. I had also really fixated because I thought that the game might be shorter. Like if France can hold out, if Germany flips, if I can get it to around 7-ish centers between Trieste, Serbia, and Greece, then that's a place where I could still be in contention as the game goes on. And that was where I had really started to fixate. And so Russia was supportive of me getting Serbia. I really tried getting Turkey supportive of me getting Greece and being like, hey, like if I have an army in Greece, then that's great for us because that just is a good bulwark of our relationship. And that gives me the space to move fleets west, you the space to pivot fleets north, and we can work something out. And I was like, it's not perfect, but like we have to try to do what we can and be a little creative because if we don't, Cedric wins.
You've already said hindsight's 2020, but in hindsight, would you have rather built the army?
No, because, like, again, hindsight is 2020. I should have asked. I think I should have gone about differently asking Russia. Like, I should have said at the start, is it a red line for an army? I'm kind of getting fixated on Greece and thinking about it. What are your thoughts? And had he said it's a red line, I wouldn't have put as much of a fight up. And so,
I think you shouldn't have asked him if it's a red line, right? Don't you?
Should not have.
Because you're giving him the power to say no.
Yeah, but I mean, he also had the power to say no anyway. I figured that the game is pretty screwed anyway if I don't find a way to go west. And if I can secure a relationship with Russia that helps us start to move Turkey to the elimination pile, then that allows me to start moving towards Cedric. I'm not going to say it was a perfect plan, and it wasn't. And ultimately, I decided to flee. And
was he asking you what you were going to build?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, he was under the impression. So, like, he was under the impression that me getting Trieste was the agreement of me building the fleet. When I argued no, Serbia was the condition of me building the fleet. And so then I got fixated on the semantics.
Couple of things here now. Where the breakdown happens from Tim is like, and we can talk about the individual moves, but it appeared to me that he didn't fully trust you, even though he knew he had to give you Serbia. He's already getting stabbed by Germany, and he wants you to move to Tyrolia, and he feels like you want him to vacate Vienna and Budapest. I don't know if you heard that, like where he's supposed to move all his armies away, and you won't move your armies to the line, and that this created mistrust. Did you call BS on that or no?
I don't think he clarified what was moving to Tyrolia, because he wanted me this turn to move like Trieste up to Tyrolia or something like that. Like, I wasn't comfortable doing it unless I could trust that Trieste wasn't about to get sniped from behind, because I was happy with the idea of Venice going up to Tyrolia, but I was obviously anxious about Piedmont. Like, if I'm doing that, it's pretty provocative. And then if I'm moving Trieste up there, I'm not getting Serbia, so this isn't working. So,
which is another reason you needed that army.
That's what I was saying. So, it obviously didn't work out. But ultimately the goal was, and this is where I really lay a lot of frustration at Tim's feet, is that I think looking back on it, he was really wanting to get me to work on both the West and the East, but was not giving me the space to do either. So I was unable to be able to focus on the West because I didn't have the space in the East, while also at the same time in the East, I was like, he was asking me to like actually be like, never mind, actually, if you just want to go West and stop Cedric, that would be great. And so I was like, which one do you want from me? Do we want to work together and stop Turkey, or do you want me to go West? Because I'm trying to do both, but I cannot do both at this moment. So
all right, let's hit 1905.
Sorry.
So ultimately, you were comfortable enough to leave Piedmont because Germany, I assume, told you you're going to Marseille, and you got Serbia here. So we got Russia going to the black. So it's all looking okay. And what's your impression?
It was going great. Like, I was like, okay, well, I've reassured, and like, because this is something that I also got frustrated with Tim about, is that in his interview, he says that he was uncomfortable with me being chummy with Germany, but he was being chummy with Turkey too. And I knew that, and I didn't object, because we're playing diplomacy. If you are not diplomacying, then you are not playing this game. So I didn't mind it, but I hated that was one of his reasons for wanting to not work together. And so he was frustrated that I was talking with Turkey as well, because I was trying to push Turkey to flip their fleets eastward, because I was interested. And so that's why we ultimately arranged the bounce in Albania. So I'm like, I'm happy to bounce you here. I'm going for Serbia. If you can pivot your fleets eastward, then I can go westward. And that kind of plays for both of them. Because at this point, I was really worried about Cedric's lead and how there was nobody in a position to oppose him. And so...
Well, I think that's all valid, but there's another problem, right? Which is if he attacks Russia here, as Russia implodes, that might just enable Cedric more.
It might have, but my chances of winning increase. So, But also because Tim was insistent that he was like, oh, Turkey is going to pivot their fleets. Don't worry about it. And I was like, why are you so sure? Like, that makes absolutely no sense to me if I just don't talk to Turkey. And so I went through that was the goal there, is that I wanted to do the bounce in Albania because I wanted to try to win over Turkey to turn around. And if he saw that I was in Trieste and was in Serbia and had the armies and our fleets were in a solid-ish enough position, that there was something to do there. But the fact that his fleets continued to pivot towards me demonstrated to me that there wasn't ever going to be an option there. And so I was, at this point, all in on the Tim train.
Before we get to fall 1905, I had pinned a question that I think is good now to talk about, which is, Tim had told you, or you got word that Darcy was playing now for third. Did you have discussions with Darcy about this?
No, I didn't care. Like, objectively, if he wants to play for third, that's his prerogative. I kind of dislike that he announced it to everybody, but like, I feel like there's a lot of like philosophies and thoughts about diplomacy, and ultimately, to me, I think that you should play the game. It's a little disappointing that he did that, but I didn't care, if that makes sense. Like, if he wanted to play for third, that's fine.
Had Ankara gone to black and Aegean gone to Khan, he would have had a lot more space to do things.
That's correct. So I was very interested in trying, like, I still always felt like the best way to stop Cedric was me getting space with fleets. And I was pretty open to however that came up, whether it meant that I was working with Turkey and trying to figure it out. Like, I wasn't saying it was perfect, but I was like, at this point, if we're not trying to rally against the leader, then we've all lost the game. So
I think you've solved a piece of the puzzle for me. The arranged bounce in Albania now is because you really did want to move a fleet west against Cedric, and this was arranged with Turkey, hoping Turkey would also, do the bounce in the black and move to Khan sort of thing.
But then Turkey told me later that he was like, I don't really care. Like, I can't stop Cedric anyway, so why should I care if he's big? So
you can stop attacking someone who can do something about it. But this is the point where you guys needed an FIT. It's because the North was just too strong, and Darcy didn't care. So
all right, let's move it to the fall here. Here we go, Charlie Brown.
I mean, at this point, I was pretty, like, I think I sent Cedric a message being like, all of my units are yours. Where do you want them to go? If you're going to win, let's just lock this in. Because for all of the malicious stuff of me talking about Cedric here, because it's all hindsight, we had gotten along the entire game. Like, we both like seafood, so we were pitching this idea of sending each other a seafood picture once a week of like, oh, what have you eaten and was it good? And so like we were like constant, because I do love those mini games throughout a tournament. Like, I think that that's fun and it helps build like something outside of this game to talk about that's genuine to just being a person. And so after this happened, I was like, all right, well, Cedric wins this game because Russia and Turkey's only options are through each other. And if Cedric already has Germany pretty much locked in, then it's over. So for me, like, I also learned around this point that Tim had decided the game was already unwinnable because Darcy was playing for third and was in Cedric's pocket, which for me implies that he was, I honestly, I just thought he wasn't very creative. Like, his whole plan was, oh, and then Turkey will throw to me. And that was
his entire, well, I think he said, try and kill you if we could, but yeah.
And I'm just like, that's such a vanilla strategy. I'm sorry. Like try different. So I don't like throws. Like, I know that I just took a moment to say, if Darcy wants to play for third, that's Darcy's prerogative. But I just think that throwing is kind of a moot point. And I know that that's a whole thing in the community. And it's a thing that I always have considered a faux pas and I don't love, but I digress. So at this point, I was in the let's make sure Cedric wins camp. And I knew that all I needed to do was stall Turkey I needed to stall Turkey for my own ability to survive. And I needed to block Russia from ever getting Venice. Because when you count dots, that was the missing piece for him.
And did you want to try and work with Germany here a little bit? But Germany's just been stabbed by England, so it's not like there's a lot of options. I think he just.
I understand that Denmark was a malicious support. I don't know if that's actually true. You'll have to ask Cedric. But At that point, I was like, I think I was kind of explaining, like, Darcy and I were kind of in a, we've already lost. Let's just make sure Cedric wins, because we were both pretty annoyed at Tim. And so I spent a lot. This is one of those moments of marriage counseling where I was like, hey guys, we've got the vision. Let's sell this. Let's just make sure that the West wins.
Yeah, Tim said it wasn't that it was planned for Denmark.
Okay. Good for him. Like, I mean, that's his answer. Sorry. It's not what I thought at the time. It's good to know.
I think it's a soft
stab. Get the stab he was praying for.
I think it's a soft stab. I don't think that, I think he played it off as malicious support, but I think Cedric knew. I think Tim was pretty convincing on that point. Okay, look, I think this is a good ending point for part 1. We will end the recording here and we'll come back and do part 2.